polyethylene terephthalate. You get down here this instant. We're going to melt you into a brick and bacteria is going to eat you. That's what the scientists said to this plastic they were experimenting on in the 2020s. And the bacteria came along and it ate that plastic quite quickly. And that was news. Let's talk about it. Hi, it's Ftrhstry. We're in a time vortex, remembering the next 100 years. Important moment in 2022. There was a published discovery, really more of an invention actually, of a new kind of bacteria that can eat plastic 3 times faster than the previous fastest plastic-eating bacteria. This plastic is quite common. Polyethylene terephthalate is all over the place. It's the sciencey, fancy-dancy name for polyester. So I think you've probably worn it on your body or drunk water from it or kicked it as a soccer ball or like literally anything it, because plastic is everywhere. We make like 350, well, no, we'll get to 350. 350 billion years is how long it would take this cool new speedy bacteria to dissolve all of the plastic that we make in 1 year. 1 year, which is about, in American terms, 180 billion pounds of plastic in 2022. That's a lot of plastic, obviously, duh. And this new super speedy plastic-eating bacteria would still take 350 million years to dissolve that 1 year's worth of plastic. So that's sort of a scale of the plastic problem picture. You probably also heard only like 9% of plastic gets recycled. That's not great. So most of it is just piling up out there and it's turning up everywhere. It's all over the oceans. It's inside the fish. It's inside you right now. And it would be me, except I'm an algorithm. So I'm made of digital bits and bobs. I'm polluted with other problems, but they're not plastic based. And as oil is getting cheaper because you're transitioning to more sustainable forms of energy, unfortunately, plastic's getting even cheaper too. So it's sort of a damnable race because recycling has to beat the price efficiency of creating new plastic. And that's really hard because recycling is energy intensive and it creates this sort of mucky grey plastic that people don't like to use because people are disgusting. And so enter this new cool bacteria, right? It's called Ftrhstry, which just means it can dissolve this polyethylene terephthalate quite quickly. And it does it about 3 times faster than the next closest kind. The other kinds are also based on Idionellus sciensis, which I'm sure you've heard of. It's a wild plastic-eating bacteria discovered just a few years back, early thousands, in Japan, I believe. And the theory is that it evolved to eat plastic because there's so freaking much plastic everywhere on the planet. So it makes sense the bacteria would be learning to eat it. And over the long run of history, that will gradually happen. But it's going to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Each bit of plastic takes like 300, 400, 500 years to dissolve. So if we can speed up that process or at least improve the efficiency of recycling, then we'll be doing humanity and animality a favor, which is why Ftrhstry is a cool thing. So the technical details of how they did this, they used a freely available tool that I'll put in place for you in case you want to invent a plastic-eating bacteria, and they swapped out some amino acids with some other modified enzymes. We've been modifying enzymes since the heady days of 2005. But in the early 20s, it's finally getting this new AI tech applied to it. We talked about AlphaFold. This is going to get better in years ahead. We'll come back to where it's going. But quickly, what they did was they looked at the original wild variety of this plastic eater, and then they looked at 2 modified varieties, which were also pretty good. And they ran it through the program to see if they could swap any amino acids out that might make it better. And they found one that did make it significantly better, and they only had to change 6 amino acids to do this, which is quite something because that's relatively small in terms of like how much they adjusted this wild protein and the modified versions of the protein. Obviously, it's pretty straightforward, and it suggests that more evolution is yet to come in this space as we get better at refining which amino acids go where. We'll be able to eat that plastic faster. Now, why does it take so long? The short answer is basically because the bacterium is not very good at dealing with variable density. So if the plastic is is crystallized in different densities, it's going to have a really hard time dealing with that. So the first thing you've got to do is melt the plastic down into these little bricks, and then feed these crystallinely uniform bricks to the bacterium, which can then eat them at like 50 degrees Celsius in the span of about 2 weeks, which doesn't sound that impressive, but again is 3 times faster than the previous world record. So, moving in the right direction, right? It's really exciting that you're getting this already in the early 20s, because by the later 20s, with AlphaFold and the other tools at your disposal and the emerging AI toolkit, you're going to be able to do this way more effectively. And the main upshot of that is not so much that you get to apply it in the wild and like release bacteria into the ocean to eat up all the plastic bits, although there's some discussion of that and early trials of it in the late 20s and early 30s. The main application is actually for recycling plants, because as a beautiful little coda to this experiment, the researchers put their plastic bricks in this bacteria and then looked for the monomers. They tried to reassemble basically the elements of the plastic, the single molecules that they could then recombine into more plastics to kick around or drink from or whatever. And they got up to almost 95% recovery. So that's pretty good. That's a good indicator that this could be useful on an industrial scale as part of a recycling process. And that is where this will largely go for the next several decades. It takes a little more refined, complex AI thinking to build systems that you can actually sort of safely release in the wild, because you don't want to just put something out there that eats everything and then let it loose in the oceans. That's a little problematic. So you need to create bacteria that will emit the right kind of things, like they need to be turning the plastic into the right sort of byproducts, and you need to create bacterium that will have sort of a natural shelf life, so they will dissolve on their own after a given amount of time. They won't over-replicate and destroy or endanger other parts of the food chain, including us. So in the short run, what you can do is rely on plastics less, but you could also play around with this nifty bacteria rearranger if you're into very sciencey stuff. Again, I will put that in the place. I may not have said that before. One gets confused with multiple iterations of oneself cascading like a river through the fountain of time. Future up. Yeah, bye.